Welcome to the HSEP 302 Fireside Chat. During this session, I'll be joined by emergency management practitioners who work in local government in the Richmond area. These are subject matter experts with decades of combined experience. You've heard me emphasize the importance of different perspectives in emergency management, and this group will provide just that. During this fireside chat, you will learn about their organizations and communities with a focus on strategies to overcoming challenges. I want to thank you all, the panelists, in advance on behalf of the class for volunteering your time, insight, and expertise. But with that, let's get to the conversation. So, what I'll ask you all to do is just, introduce yourselves. If you, want to talk about your title, where you work, how you ended up in your position, and what drew you to the field. So what I'll do is I'll start with Jess to kick off the conversation.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Robison. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator for Chesterfield County. In Chesterfield, I am an employee of the fire department, so emergency management is embedded in the fire department. I actually got my start by being a volunteer. I do not have an emergency management degree. I didn't really even know much about emergency management outside of FEMA until I moved to Chesterfield, and in 2017 took the CERT program here. And in my previous life, I was an avid volunteer manager. I ran volunteer programs. I did adult education for the Department of the Army. So after joining the CERT program in Chesterfield, when the program manager position became open, I applied, and with my strong volunteer management background, I got the position, and I was in charge of managing the CERT program, the volunteers, the training, and then all of the public outreach education classes, which was totally in my wheelhouse. I learned emergency management as I went through my positions. In 2019, I was promoted to the Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator. And then when COVID hit in March 2020, I was named the interim coordinator and hired on as the permanent full-time emergency management coordinator in October of 2020. So in that role, my duties are basically to oversee the emergency management program, where we serve every single county department and every single county resident in the world of preparedness, response, mitigation, and recovery.
Thanks, Jess. I'll move on to Robert, who's next on my screen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Williams. I'm the Coordinator of Emergency Management for the city of Hopewell, Virginia. I started my fire service career as a volunteer in Chesterfield, and from that, I got hired on the Defense Logistics Agency that was then known as Defense General Supply Center. It's a military base in Chesterfield, about 600 acres. We had a full-service fire department. I went in there as a firefighter, became an assistant chief after a couple of years. During that time, I had an opportunity to go to work for Department of Emergency Management as a reservist. They had a reservist program that looked a lot like FEMA's reservist program, and we worked in the Emergency Operations Center. And I was assigned several different roles there. And after a couple activations in the EOC, I got the opportunity to become an instructor for VDM. And I worked for them as an instructor for a number of years and really enjoyed that. So I thought this might be that second career that firefighters tend to have after they retire. On the base, we didn't have a full-time emergency manager at the time, so I sort of assumed the roles of the emergency manager and did a lot of the duties, a lot of the public outreach that Jess talked about. We did that on the installation. We managed all the disaster preparedness programs and all the related programs that went in with all the things that she described, preparedness planning, along with being in the fire service. I rounded out my career in the fire service, retiring as the training chief in 2017, and came to work for the city of Hopewell in a part-time position as the emergency services specialist. The reservist program kind of went away for VDM. I still served them as an instructor and have taught a little bit of everything across the state, and continue to do that as when I came to work for Hopewell. We had hired the first time a emergency services specialist, so a part-time position to help our primary emergency manager. Did that until COVID happened. As COVID happened, they asked me to work full-time and help manage the city's COVID response. Did that, and as the emergency manager that preceded me, Mr. Rupert, Chief Rupert, became promoted to fire chief. I got the opportunity to take over the position as the emergency coordinator here. Hopewell is a little bit different than Chesterfield. We're nowhere near as large, but we have a significantly different hazard base because of all the chemicals we have and some of the challenges we have here. So it's a good comparison from a big county to a small city. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. I'll move on to Major Comer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Major Leslie T. Comer. I work at Charles City County Sheriff's Office. How can I say it? My everyday role is pretty much working with the Sheriff's Office. Then I have my part-time role as coordinator for the county. As far as the law enforcement, I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, and pretty much I just got into emergency management, say probably in 2017, 2018, when I met Darshan on us doing the Syria power plant exercise. So ever since working that exercise is when I pretty much started my career or learning more and more about emergency management. And I'm still learning. So I'm not there yet, but I'm still in the process of learning as much as I can. Because, you know, from the law enforcement side, I'm used to responding. But on the emergency management side, it's more planning. So just trying to combine the two to make sure, you know, especially law enforcement, we don't do a lot. We plan, but we don't plan as much as emergency management plan as far as events. All we know is, hey, let's respond, let's take care of, you know, eliminate the threat, and the rest somebody else will handle. So learning emergency management side is kind of like I say, balancing me out. So I enjoy what I've learned so far, and I'm still learning. That's all I have.
Thanks, Mr. Comer. All right, and Robin.
Hello, everybody. My name's Robin Hillman. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator in Goochland County. Like Jess, emergency management is under the Fire and Rescue Program. I got started in the Fire and Rescue Program as a volunteer when I was 17 in high school in the community that I live, which is Goochland. I've lived here all my life. And as time went on, when I got into my professional career for the company that I worked with in the private sector, I did business continuity, crisis management, and disaster recovery for about 25 years. I was, at the end of that career, I was responsible for over 22 locations around the world and making sure that they had business continuity in place and disaster recovery plans, and worked a lot of crisis management situations. During that time, towards the end of that, I was also still doing the volunteer work as EMS that I started when I was in high school. And about, I'd say probably about 15 or 20 years ago, I kind of started volunteering also from an emergency management perspective. And about 2 years ago, they had an opportunity to actually have a full-time position. And I was lucky enough to be selected to start my full-time career here in the fire and rescue. Kind of, I guess I look at it as almost like a dream job. Been doing it for so long. And I actually get to do what I love every day. So thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Just, you know, for the class again, there's a lot of different experience, not only time-wise, but also, you know, jurisdiction-wise, right? You've got 4 very different localities, you know, some different organizational structures potentially as well that we'll go into. And, you know, there's a lot to learn here and a lot to share with each other. All righty. Well, I will move on to our next question. And some of you had already touched on this as far as organization goes in your localities. But, you know, what is the role of emergency management in your jurisdiction, and how has that evolved over time? And I'll just start, I'll snake back around here. I'll start with Robin for this one.
Sure. So when the role here in Goochland County actually started out, I would say that in a volunteer role, it was probably really kind of doing the minimum of what was required to make sure that we were meeting the requirements for the state and for FEMA. And we focused on, you know, all of the areas of mitigation to preparedness, and then response activities, as well as recovery. And as it continued to evolve, as different threats have evolved, we've actually been able to evolve the program as well. The very first incident that I remember really putting all the pieces together was for Hurricane Isabel in 2003. And that had the biggest impact on our entire county, primarily from a lot of downed trees, power outages as a result of that, and roads that were closed. So that was the first countywide type of event, and we actually were able to evolve from that and be able to build the program that we have today. And now that I'm in it from a full-time perspective, I really get to spend a lot more time on doing outreach training in the community around the program, and helping them to be better prepared, along with working on expanding the operations plan that we already had. And we've added COOP, which is for our essential functions that we have within the county, making sure that we have something that we can put in place when those disasters happened. It was used primarily when COVID happened, so I'm sure you'll hear about that as we talk more about that today. We've had a couple of incidents since then, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as the conversation goes on. But now we're, really focused on it 100% of the time now that I'm in a full-time position.
Role of emergency management in Charles City is to provide citizens information regarding disasters, either man-made or natural threats, as far as tornadoes and stuff like that. And I know recently till things changed, as far as for the Syria power plant, we was like the I guess we call it the decon station, when they, people, when they experience the situation in Syria, they would come to our county to pretty much for housing, or to get rinsed off any radiation they might receive through that atmosphere. So, and also far as for our county, is also planning and organizing resources. We don't really have a full-time emergency manager per se. It's the county administrator, but she's tied up with her other duties. So you have the county administrator, who's the emergency manager for Charles City County. And you have the fire chief, who's the emergency manager coordinator from pretty much the fire side. And then you have myself for the law enforcement side, who's the emergency management coordinator. But this involved pretty much over the last, say, 4 or 5 years, because at first everything was on the county administrator. Then us working with the county administrator, we decide, hey, let's divide some responsibility up. So when certain storms come in, we all would take lead. Say, okay, we'd say, like, for instance, we just had Debbie. Debbie belongs to Major Comer. So Major Comer would brief out on anything dealing with Debbie. The next thing to come through, it'll be, say, our fire chief, Mr. Johnson. Anything dealing with that, he would pretty much handle that incident.
Hopewell, like I said, Hopewell is commonly known as the chemical capital of the South. So because of the concentration of manufacturing facilities, distribution facilities, and then the sheer amount of chemicals in transit in the city of Hopewell, one of our big focuses for our emergency manager is dealing with all of that. The planning that goes into that, managing the tier 2 list, managing the local emergency planning committee that's very active. And all of that is kind of a big part of my role. And then we have a few activities throughout the course of the year that require an incident action plan. We will write the incident action plans for the planned events, such as our fireworks show. And so those keep me on a day-to-day basis. And then our public information and warning falls to me too. So managing our Hopewell Alerts program is a big part of what I do. And that involves some public outreach. We've just picked up some Spanish language information we're going to try to get out to the community. So we're trying to grow our public information and warning as part of that. So again, it's whatever happens next. And I always like to say, whatever the fire chief needs is kind of what my job is to do, to kind of keep the regulation people away from him, and all the regulations met. The filling out the reports that are required by the state, managing the grants is another key role.
All right. So Chesterfield is an interesting jurisdiction to work in. We are large, 466 square miles. We have rural, urban, and suburban areas in the county. And my role has developed over time from more of a one that receives information and intelligence just for awareness, just in case, to now more of a proactive role, thanks to COVID. So in Chesterfield, the director of emergency management is our county administrator. The deputy director is our fire chief, and then I am the coordinator. I do have a day-to-day supervisor who's the assistant chief of risk reduction. But when we are in the thick of it, I report directly to the fire chief, and it's my duty to basically carry out the objectives that Dr. Casey and Chief Center have for a coordinated response. When the sky's not falling, we really work and focus on preparedness and planning, training, exercise, and really developing the core capabilities for our county, so that we can meet the challenges of the large and diverse area that we serve. We do have some up and coming new trends that are on our radar in the way of sporting and special events. Tourism has really taken off for Chesterfield County. It has been a focus of the county to create a destination, if you will. So we have international level sporting competitions. We have I can't remember if it's the world's largest or if it's the largest on the East Coast, man-made lake and surf park coming. We have constant business development. We have the Lego company building their American manufacturing plant here in Chesterfield County. So we have so much, and we have dams. Oh, dams. Dams are like the quiet, like Achilles heel of the county. We have over 100 dams, almost it will be 11 when Wake Lake is built, high hazard. And that's been a challenge to get our hands around and really get good information, to respond in public information and warning and evacuation. So it's just, a lot of different day-to-day areas that we're being proactive on. And what's really been nice about my position is since COVID, departments and leaders within the county see the value of emergency management and our capabilities now. And we have been, at the table for planning. We have been asked to coordinate and facilitate special events and plans because they're seeing that we see and we know kind of bits and pieces of all the things, but we always know who to go to that has more information or the resources that we need. So it's really been a great development over the past couple of years where emergency management was in the shadow and we were considered the weather people. And now we are active and engaged within the county on all sorts of levels to be proactive instead of reactive. So, and in Chesterfield, I have 2 full-time staff members. So, and we're considered resource rich for staffing, and it is not enough. To Robert's point, we manage our own grants. We survive pretty much on grant funding, and that's a huge lift too. So we're busy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Thanks, Jess. And just to ask the rest of the group, I know we touched on this a little bit, but Jess talked about staffing in her organization. What does the staffing look like on your teams? Major Comer, I know you mentioned that Chief Johnson is your counterpart over in the fire department. Do you have other emergency management team members, with you, and Robin and Robert as well?
I think that's it. It's just the county administrator, Chief Johnson, and myself. I mean, other than that, nobody's really involved in it but us.
So from my perspective, I report to the fire chief, so he would be my alternate if I'm not available. And of course, he, as the director of emergency management, is the county administrator, which he reports to. I do have several volunteers under me that help in different emergency management roles. One of them is specifically assigned to more of an emergency management role, and then another person actually leads our CERT program as the program manager for that as well. But I really rely a lot on volunteers within our organization to support the different activities that we have going on.
I report to the fire chief, and I'm lucky to have a fire chief that was formerly in this position, so he really understands the roles and responsibilities pretty well. Fire chief reports directly to the city manager. We do have a newly appointed assistant city manager. So we're not sure how that'll wash out in the long run, but currently the chief reports directly to the city manager. So our city manager is our chief elected official. They're the emergency coordinator. director, and it rolls down to assigned position to us within the fire department for a coordinator. I have one part-time position allocated to me, and currently we fill that with a firefighter that also works part-time as a fire marshal. So he wears a pretty busy guy between being a fire marshal, firefighter, paramedic, and then filling office in our role.
So for me now, when you look at the threat and hazard profile in our EOP, of course, hurricanes and those natural disasters are at the top of the list. However, you know, I feel like we're very well prepared for those. We've gone through them several times. We've developed the capabilities to address those. Where my concern is with the sports and tourism that is up and coming. You know, the increase in vulnerability with soft targets, you know, the things that can go wrong at special events. You know, you think back to Las Vegas, or even just the Washington Nationals games a few years back. There was a shooting outside the baseball stadium, but it created panic inside the baseball stadium. You know, we have to really, you know, be aware of the events going on. We have a concert series that happens in Chesterfield that is not county sponsored. It's on county property, but it's run by a private, you know, entity. So, you know, we do a lot of special events planning for county sponsored events, or like the county fair is a private organization, but they work very closely with us. But like, you know, the concert promoters, the sporting folks that come in, those tournaments, they're using our facilities, but we are not necessarily involved in those in the planning or emergency, you know, action plan of those events. So that is one thing that really keeps me up at night is, you know, and we're making progress. The conversations have been out there, and I think we're going to start moving towards, you know, creating a county level framework for special event planning, response, and preparedness. But that's just the one thing right now that I know if something happens, we're just going to be drawing on the experience and capabilities we know we have, and you know, to address it. And I feel confident that we will, but it's just, it just makes me nervous.
Hopewell's a small city, and we're landlocked, but we're also at the confluence of two significant rivers. So my concern is, one, something that impacts the people in the community, but also something that affects either one of those two major waterways being a concern. Being tucked away like we are, but we still have two international ports, and we still have all the industry that our commodity flow study a few years ago told us there's not a day of the week or hour of the day that chemicals aren't flowing through the city of Hopewell. That's kind of what weighs in the back of my mind when I lay down in bed, like, okay, what's moving through the city right now? How bad a hazard material is being produced, manufactured, distributed, shipped through the city, and what's going to happen if it gets out of its container and causes a problem. Like Jess said, I think we're pretty well prepared for the environmental hazards. If we have the storms that come through, I think we've done that. Unfortunately, we've had the opportunity to do significant infrastructure loss a couple times. We've had water system failures a couple times, so we've kind of got a little experience with that. But that's another one that bothers me or worries me, because we have an aging infrastructure in the city. As the city's over 100 years old, and a lot of the infrastructure shows that. So that's constantly a thought that lays back there too.
From our perspective with Goochland County, in addition to, you know, some of the threats that they've already spoken about, we look at also the physical makeup of the county. Our county happens to be a very long county. It's about 35 miles in length, and it actually is made up of a lot of rural and a lot of extra urban, where the urban part of Henrico is actually moving on the eastern part of our county. So we're becoming more densely populated. And the southern border of our county has the James River runs along that entire border. And the northern border of our county has Interstate 64. So with Interstate 64, with it being 24 hours, 7 days a week, that you have all types of different tractor trailers that are traveling up and down your road. We never know what type of hazardous material we might have that's traveling, as well as along our southern border with the James River. We also have CXX, which could have any type of, hazardous material that it might be transporting as well. So we look at those types of threats as concerns because of the density of our community that's growing. Tornadoes does concern me. I do look at history of the types of events that we've had. So we've had tornadoes, most recently in 2022, we had 2 back-to-back that actually went down our courthouse road and was actually went over top of our administration building, went over top of our emergency operations center. So, those are different things that, are reminders of making sure that we have contingency plans for the plans that we already have in place. Like, if our EOC had been impacted, where will we actually go to operate? So those types of things, I am concerned about, and, how we're going to, manage those severe types of incidents. In 2011, we were affected by the earthquake that happened in Louisa. So we didn't have earthquakes as a concern really until then. And so that's part of, one of the things that we take into consideration. And last year, and this year, wildfires has become something that's been, more of a concern. So I look at that as a part of our threats and risks. And I'd say the last thing that concerns me as well has been cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is actually more of a greater risk and target for local communities, local government, because there are so many different agencies and so many different systems. And with local governments, they tend to not have as much funding to be able to invest in the protection that they need, like a lot of the private sector companies may have in place. So the bad guys often will look to try to, make attacks on a local government. So those are the, I say the key things that probably keep me up at night. Thank you.
So my position, everything keeps up late at night because I'm dealing with the law enforcement side of things, and I'm dealing with the county as far as the emergency management side of things. So go back to when I used to work at a university. I used to be a police lieutenant at a university, and just like they're just making sure, like in the university side, just making sure the students are safe. That was my main concern, dealing with active shooters. Anything can harm the students on that campus. So yeah, but here in Charles City, I think our main thing is pretty much the Colonial Pipeline, because the pipeline goes right through the middle of our county. And being, I know I didn't in the beginning tell you, brief about the county itself. Our county is 200 square miles, 6,500 residents. That's all we have. The police side of things is about 15 law enforcement officers. I think the fire department might be up to like, say, 30 to 30 some people. So all we have is within us. That's it. If anything happened here in Charles City County, our biggest thing is manpower. You're talking about like far as, if we have to open up a shelter after the first 2 days, can we really manage anymore without any outside assistance? So we've definitely, as far as resource people, I've been working trying to get our CERT program going, but getting people to volunteer for CERT is a problem. So anything I know that will affect us is not having the staffing to pretty much go after the first couple of days or the first 24 hours of us open up a shelter, anything like that. So that keeps me up at nighttime. What else can I add? And just like, I know we talked briefly about COVID. COVID kept me up at nighttime because I'm dealing with, from the law enforcement side, making sure our deputies don't get affected, make sure the dispatchers don't get affected. So when 911 calls come in, you don't have nobody to answer the phone. Then at the same time, helping the fire department hold COVID clinics. So just how can we work in a smart way and still provide a service to the community? So, but we figured out, you think about a lot of law enforcement, I'm talking both sides, I'm sorry. Law enforcement, most departments have computers in their cars, so they can work remotely. Up until COVID happened, my guys didn't have computers in their cars. So I was able to push that issue through the county and say, hey, let me get these guys some laptops so they work in their vehicles, so they're not all coming to the office and contaminating each other. So that kind of helped us protect everybody here. So let's let them work in the field. So just thinking about creative ways to, when it's a threat, how can we pretty much overcome that threat by thinking of creative ways, or I guess buying equipment to help us get through it, because we don't have the manpower. That's all happening.
Thanks. And dovetailing right off threats and or that introduction to learning about your threats and hazards. I think we all do a really good job at acknowledging that, as an emergency manager, we can't necessarily control if something is going to happen, and how bad it's going to be. So, I'll ask this question of the whole group, and anybody is welcome to jump in here. But, how do you address those threats and hazards that you can't eliminate? What is your strategy to do that?
Coming from a fire service background, I tend to think of, that we're not going to be able to eliminate all the hazards. So we have policies and procedures in place, plans in place to manage the event should it occur. It's one thing when we talk about planned events, and like Jess was alluding to with the sporting events and the tourism, a lot of planned events, you can really put a well-managed plan in place. But for the unexpected, for the incident that occurs, you have to have plans and procedures in place, standing orders, things that here's what we're going to do immediately. Here's what we're going to do in 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. Is kind of the best way that you can manage those things that you can't totally eliminate.
For me, it's mitigate. And our number one mitigation activity in Chesterfield County is education and public outreach. We have about 385,000 residents here in our county. And again, keeping in mind, we have people that live in rural, suburban, and urban areas. So, we have a lot of different cultures, we have a lot of different languages, we have a lot of different socioeconomic backgrounds and educational backgrounds. So we really, work to reach out into the community, and that's where our CERT program comes in. They're wonderful. They've been taught to deliver, public education classes for preparedness. We of course we hit on household preparedness, your food, your water, all that, but we also saw a need and created a financial preparedness. So we focus on the disaster happened, now what? Because, getting all the stuff that you can, in advance of a storm to prepare to ride out the storm is great. But we know that, a hurricane's not going to come up the coast and go, dang, that Richmond area, they're well prepared. Keep on moving. I'm not going to hit there. They're prepared. They have their water, their food, their flashlights. It's going to happen. So are we doing a good job educating people about that part of it, like on the back end of the storm, what happens after it hits? So we work really hard to get our residents to feel confident and comfortable, and let them understand the limitations of what the local government can do. We have finite resources. No matter what locality you go to, there's going to be finite resources in comparison to needs after a disaster. So we want to empower folks to take care of themselves, take care of others, plan in advance, think about what they might need. Should the lights go out? Should there be flooding? It really is kind of, fire education has done such a great job over the years of talking to kids and families about, 2 ways out of your rooms, how to get out of your house, a meeting point, what to do in a fire. And that's what we're trying to emulate with emergency management across a broad swath of our most common threats and hazards.
In addition to what they've talked about, so we focus on the training in the community, but we also focus on the training for those that are going to be responding when those emergency situations happen. So the different county agencies that would be involved in doing shelter operations or family assistance centers, those that would be involved in doing cybersecurity response when the attack happens. So training on those specific types of functions that have to happen, as well as the different types of actions that they would take. So practicing what's in those plans. And we do that through different types of exercises that we'll hold. Some of them will be drills where in the schools, they'll actually, as you know, they always practice doing fire drills. They'll practice doing lockdowns. but also with taking that further and doing tabletop exercises, looking at those different threats that are within our community that we're concerned about, and playing that scenario out with the people that would be involved in that around the table. That allows people to get familiar with their roles and responsibilities, and it also allows us to be able to identify other ways that we might need to mitigate or things that we can put in place so that we're better prepared. And then the last type of exercise that we would do would be like a functional type exercise, where you actually go to your shelter and you open your shelter up, and we'll invite people from the community to be a part of being those clients that would actually go through the shelter, so the people operating can get the experience in doing their procedures, but the citizens also get to see kind of what it looks like and can help kind of spread that word and be supportive of when those types of things happen.
Not a lot to add, like pretty much what Robin said, and then in that whole process, building that partnership. Because I know from us having an emergency management team in Charles City County, all the departments get to sit at the table and discuss things. So building that partnership and those rapports is always a great thing.
Thanks. And really, I'll skip over this question here and come back to it eventually, I promise, about vulnerable populations, because that's a big topic in the class. You talked about stakeholders and having partners at the table, inviting folks to training. We all know emergency management it's a team sport, right? We don't do this by ourselves. Even if we have a team, we don't do this just within the emergency management team. How do you go about getting buy-in and interest and involvement from your not only planning stakeholders, but your response stakeholders as well?
I think for me, my success in getting buy-in has always been, I've always tried to approach things as a win-win. Instead of going to social services and, asking them to just do more work, because this is what this is, right? Like any kind of response partner, planning partner, they're being asked to do more work in addition to their daily duties. Our daily duties around emergency management, theirs don't. Everyone's busy, everyone is stressed, everyone needs, more resources, more time, more everything. So for me to come in and now ask these folks, can you do this? Can you take more time out that you don't have and do this, to help the emergency management program, to help me? I think, I try to approach it from a win-win situation. They all know that they have responsibilities in the county should, a response have to happen. They all know that. We have great leadership. They buy into it, which I think that is key as well. Because if the leadership buys into it, everyone else buys into it to some degree. But then holding their hands. So, kind of going back to, Robin has worked so hard to develop COOP. Chesterfield has worked hard to develop COOP as well. And to Robin's point, COOP is so important because we still have to maintain those essential functions, right? So instead of just asking a department to write a COOP plan, which I wouldn't even know where to start, to be honest with you, if someone had approached me 4 years ago and said, write a COOP plan, I'd have been like, cool, I'll get on that. And then it may or may not happen, and it may or may not be effective. So instead, we work to provide resources to those folks by way of templates and quick trainings and accessibility to our staff to ask questions and have that help should they need it. Did they have to use our template? No. Some departments, they have to have continuity plans for, other mandates that they have to meet based on their profession. But for those folks who just, they didn't know where to start, they had nothing, giving them something to work with and assuring them that they're not going to be alone in the process and that we're there to support them, I think has done wonders. And then, showing up when they come to get that support. And, I told our folks with COOP, I said, I will be the first to admit, COOP is not my favorite EM topic. It is not my favorite thing to do. So when you get this and you feel overwhelmed, it's okay. Call me. You can, you can fuss, you can cuss, you can vent, and I'm good for it. And then I'm going to help you get through it. And they did. And we had a 100% compliance with the COOP plans by that first deadline when we implemented the program. And not just our county departments who have to follow county policy, but also our partner state agencies and our constitutional officers, which they don't have to really follow any of that. So, you know, getting that buy-in, I think, isn't just, you know, acting nicely. I mean, it's the relationships, it's the trust, but it's also committing to that partnership and committing to that support and to helping them work through what they're being asked to do so that they feel good about it.
Jess?
Great. It's great to hear that 100% buy-in on the COOP plan. I don't have that here. I wish I did. It is a challenge to get the other agencies, especially a small, you know, a lot of our departments are very small, to get them to do that buy-in on the COOP or other programs we have going on. So again, as Jess mentioned, sales, part of us being a salesman, making sure they see the benefit of it. Sometimes it's being the hard sell of, you know, this is your responsibility. I'm here to help you do that. But ultimately, if it fails, it's your failure. So I'm here to help you not have that failure occur on your watch. And that's gotten some success. But again, we don't have 100% participation like we would like to have. And just making sure they understand the magnitude of not doing this. What's going to happen if they don't do this? You know, you're right. You're asking them to do more work. You're telling it's an unfunded mandate. Here's something you have to do, and I'm telling you have to do it. And who's Robert? He's not in my chain of command to tell me what I have to do. But sometimes it's that sales pitch. Sometimes it's that heavy-handed of here's what's going to happen if you don't do it. And just to try to get that buy-in.
Have a little bit. Yeah, you just have to. For me, you just have to create that vision. I'm more like a visionary person on my side, so I'm just instead of a salesman, I'm the pastor. Hey, let's let me give you the vision. If you pray, you might go to heaven. You know what I mean? You're going to heaven. That's what you're telling me. You're going to heaven. But you just pretty much show me the vision. This is the benefit. You know, we all work together. This would be the benefit. But just showing that vision. That's my take on the buy-in.
That I would add to what's already been said was that I think if you are whoever that particular partner is, if you listen to what it is that they have as capabilities or what their goals are, they're trying to accomplish, and then tailor your ask or what your need is so that it's something that they can understand, that they can relate to. And if they feel like it's, you know, more beneficial to them, it creates that win-win that Jess was talking about.
And, you know, to Robin and Robert, listening to both of you talk, something it just kind of sparked in me, like tailoring your communication to those you are talking to, I think makes a world of difference, because I promise you, I am going to go into a room of like fire officers, police officers, or, you know, uniformed first responders and public safety in a completely different manner that I'm going to go into social services and mental health, you know, and some of our human services folks. Like there's, you know, tailoring that interaction and that message and voice, tone, tenor, you know, sometimes to Robert's point, heavy-handed works. And then to, you know, Robin, to your point, sometimes it's like, okay, let me hug you. We're going to get through this. Here's how we're going to do it together. And it's more of the love and kumbaya, you know, so that's also, I think, a really great point.
All right, so I wanted to back up a little bit here and talk about vulnerable populations quickly. So, you know, we focused the first class session on learning about vulnerable populations and what make them vulnerable in different cases, and how that can vary between different localities and settings for you know, a variety of reasons. In your localities, you know, what vulnerable populations exist and what makes them vulnerable in your specific circumstances? Because I know, again, that can vary between communities.
We don't have a significant homeless population in the city that we're aware of. We don't have the homeless encampments that you might find in some jurisdictions. But again, being so small, I think that's probably why we don't have that. I think our biggest vulnerable population is those that are on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale that just don't have the funds and the resources to self-protect or to self-evacuate when there's an incident. So we kind of focus on those. There's several government housing locations in the city. They kind of become our vulnerable population. And when we tracked it through COVID, we assessed got the state's assessment of where our vulnerable populations were, and it kind of lined up with what we thought the case to be. We were pretty well on track with where our populations were. We don't have a lot that are not native English speakers or they don't speak English as a primary language, according to the census. We always look at the census every time it comes out and kind of gather the data that it provides and see if there are any changes or trends. And then we just look at the market, what people are moving into the community, what are our first responders telling us they're finding out in the community, as well as our city agencies that work out there. What are they telling us about the population? Where are there problems or pockets of problems that we need to address?
Goochland's perspective, our vulnerable populations are kind of, there's not, like Robert was saying, there's not any specific pocket within our community. They're kind of spread out. But they're really more the individuals that fit that low income and senior citizens. Our community, with the type of housing that's coming in, it's more assisted living facilities are increasing in our community, 50 and above housing community, so neighborhoods with houses. And then nursing homes, we have some of that as well. But we started with really beyond our economic development group, looking at those organizations that are in our community that serve those different agencies that serve those populations are familiar with them. And so I keep a regular pulse and meet with those entities on a regular basis. We have a group that's called Goochland Cares. The Department of Social Services is a group that we work with on a regular basis. YMCA, Senior Connections, and then there's some churches that we have that actually do feeding programs for low-income families. And then we're also stay in touch with the NAACP as well as the Christmas Mother in our community. So that's kind of how we keep the pulse on where those citizens are at and what needs they might have.
Chesterfield, we do have a large aging population. We have a very diverse population. And what we have done is we have added demographic information into our emergency operation plan. And that information is now informing other plans so that we can ensure we have supports in place to meet the needs of our diverse community. We have looked at the different languages, top 5 languages. We have, looked at different health elements. We have information on, the population that has a need for medical devices. And I think, for us, it's just ensuring that, sometimes we understand that sometimes folks may not have the means or the knowledge. So we want to make sure that we know how to reach them and we provide an access point for services or information. Knowing that we have an aging population that may not use a lot of technology, we still really push the use of weather radios because we know that, in a time of crisis, those radios can transmit emergency messaging, whether it's weather related or not. So, we just like to have that redundancy, trying to meet all of the needs and then, work with, like Robin was saying, work with those groups that deal with those folks and work with them on a daily basis between social services, our citizen engagement and resources department, all of our nonprofits. We stay in touch with them so we understand what needs are out there and we can work to try and help meet them. I think one of the biggest challenges is the language. We don't have the resources or the abilities to just automatically translate messaging or whatnot. So, finding who in those communities that we can communicate with that will pass that message into that community has been really important for us too.
I think everybody pretty much hit on the same points. Piggyback off of Jess a little bit. Just I know for us, we rely on social services for a lot, and we have an age community here as well in Charles City. And how do you get the word out? As far as we have, technology, older people not really using technology. So I know a couple of weeks ago, I did a presentation for the Senior Connect group. Just we relying on them, I guess, to spread the word. And that's pretty much how it feels like how that, what I guess what they need from us. So service working on now and trying to build a list on the ones that they know that say if something happened, we know Sue needs transportation. So how we get Sue from her house to the shelter. So working on that portion of it, how we're gonna, help these people get from their home to a shelter in case of emergency.
Moving on to planning and activation of plans. A big part of this course is looking at different types of emergency plans, whether it's EOPs, mass care plans, et cetera, right? Hazard specific plans as well. Have you had the opportunity to activate your emergency operations plan, or some other emergency response or recovery plan, and did it go according to plan?
Myself, as far as activating the EOP plan, I think we've done portions of it, especially during COVID. Other than that, I really haven't experienced it since I've been here. And when we worked it during the COVID time, when we did operate it under the plan, I think everything came good because we end up adding more. We can't talk. We end up adding more to the plan. So stuff that wasn't in the plan, we added like our COVID procedures. Now that's part of the new plan, or like how we're going to operate the government buildings if something like that COVID happened again. That's part of now. That's been added to like our index of the plan that we already had. So I think that's pretty much my take on it.
I think there's an interesting word in there. Like we always say, have we activated the plan? And I think, I don't know about any of y'all, but in hindsight, yeah, we've used plans, but there is no
the plan
switch you flip where you're like, we're activating this plan. It's, if you're training and you're exercising and you're sharing and you're communicating plans, you just do it and, you coordinate that response. I think that's more the term that you will that at least I hear more of is a coordinated response. To me, that equates to a plan activation of some sort. The EOP, it's a framework. So anytime we have any kind of coordinated response, the EOP is activated to some degree. Maybe, we might not be in a declaration situation, but if things are going sideways and we have an incident going, well, Dr. Casey and Chief Center are calling the shot, and I'm pushing that information down to the folks who are executing whatever coordinated response we're doing, and then taking that information back up, which is EOP. But the whole, I think, activating a plan, I've never figured that one out. Like, at what point do we go, it's activated? Yes.
For us, the most recent was during COVID. We had a ice storm, you all remember, and we had a water outage going on at the same time as the ice storm. So we had a water outage during an ice storm, during a pandemic. So who we could bring into the EOP and EOC, excuse me, as indicated in EOP was different. How we staffed, where we put the staff was all different. So it worked. Wasn't ideal, but there's a really good example, as Jess was describing. We activated portions of it. It was a coordinated response, but we're dealing with three different pieces of it at the same time. We're dealing with how do we respond to the ice? Tell everybody to stay home. How do we deal with the COVID? Tell everybody to stay home. What do we do about the water? Tell everybody to come out and get water. So it was kind of confusing and a little bit of a getting the right information out at the right time and shared resources. And we don't have a lot of folks, so everybody ends up doing 2 and 3 things often.
I have a couple of different perspectives on with the plans that we've had, and really it was the COVID was a driver. The first thing that I would say is that we didn't have a COOP prior to COVID happening. And, one of the things that we took advantage of after COOP was there was some money that was available for funding. And because the departments that had to deliver those essential services were forced to come up with, what's my contingency plan if I don't work in the office, they actually did that on the fly. So we took advantage of that and used that funding to actually write our COOP plan. And it was fresh in everybody's mind, so they could actually, document what needed to be done. On the heels of that, one of the things that we looked at was our emergency operating plan that we had at the time, and it was coming due for its renewal process. And we took a little bit of, we took two different approaches with that. One is that we switched it from an approach that was really focused on essential functions to more of an approach that was a ICS model approach. And at the same time, we kind of designed the actions more like a checklist type, so that you could like pull out a section and you could give it to somebody. You can say, these are the things that you need to consider, not that you have to do all of them, but it's kind of like a reminder of, these are the things that need to be considered. You can check off the ones, make sure that you've done all the ones that are needed for that particular event. And the main reason we kind of went down that path was that, after having COVID and then since then, we kind of saw, like there's always changes in staff, and you try to do updates on an annual basis and reviews on an annual basis. But even from one event to the next event, you may not have the same people. So if you can have something that's more like a checklist approach that, allows you to kind of do on the job, training at time of event, they have something that they can refer to if they need to.
I am all about the bulleted plans, action bulleted, like not paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs. Like if I need to pull this plan out and do something, just tell me what I need to do. Love it.
Well, first, what challenges exist when it comes to building capacity and capabilities in your programs? And what challenges have you had to overcome, or are you still working to overcoming? Anybody?
I think one of the biggest challenges in developing capacity is to convince the people that hold the money that you're worth the investment. One of the biggest issues with emergency management is it's hard to quantify in dollars the work we put in, right? So kind of going back to the whole, well, I shouldn't say legislators, but people who have the money spend it on two things that will make them money, or things that they have to do, or else it's not going to be a good look. It's either a mandate, or it's just it's a professional standard. Emergency management isn't in one of those buckets yet, because it's so different everywhere you go. The mandates, when you look at the state code for local emergency management, it really does make it look like we do nothing. But the expectation of our localities, of our leadership, of our residents far exceed. And you see those expectations come out when we have disasters, which isn't every day. So that's one of the biggest challenges, is convincing. We need resources. We are very good at being very creative with what we got, though. Like, Robin uses volunteers. We use volunteers. Major and the fire chief go back and forth and split the duties. You have to get creative in emergency management, because the funding just does not pour in like it does for other public safety or human service or, development projects. So that's something that, still an uphill battle.
I think that another thing in building that capacity is the diversity that we're seeing now in emergency management. Seeing more young people going into emergency management is fantastic. When I first got into it all those years ago, it was people that moved into it like me or like Major. I was doing one profession, and okay, fire department also does emergency management, or police also do emergency management. So it became that other duty as assigned, and then maybe later you took it over kind of full time while you were doing something else. So it's great to see young people coming in that are bringing different perspectives, coming from different backgrounds. I think that's going to build our capacity as a profession. And we have to, again, work to make it a profession and not just a occupation. I think that'll really be good.
I know for us, I'm always planning and trying to get the county to think outside the box because our county is small. So and we always want to have limited manpower. I mean, we're always going to have that in Charles City. So when I go out and purchase grants and stuff like that, I always try to get grants that I can't, not only that the equipment can be used for the sheriff's office side, but it can be used on the county side. A prime example is marquee sign. So we got a message board. So message board for the county, and then the sheriff's have, because on the other side we can do it for any traffic control stuff, any speed enforcement stuff. So trying to buy equipment when I purchase stuff through grants that can be used in multiple departments, just as besides just the sheriff's office. So and then I know recently I got a grant with a drone. So we're building a drone program. So what that is, I told the sheriff I want 4 people. I want 2 people from the law enforcement side, and I want 2 people from the sheriff office. The fire department side. So we're building a partnership that way. So it's a resource that would be used for both departments. And then also I know with light towers, we got light towers. The fire department used light towers a couple of times. The county use them for special events, and we use them. We have road checks and stuff. So everything I know, I pretty much try to purchase from grants from the sheriff's office side is equipment that can be used throughout the whole county. So just think about the whole county approach.
What they've said, funding obviously continues to be the same theme in our community. And, we look for grants. Grants can be competitive, so you may not always get the funding that you need. So thinking out of the box and looking at other alternatives, looking at public-private, types of things where you can work together. Nationwide Insurance does a contest to award grain bin rescue tubes. So, applying for something like that, looking at those types of fundings that help our community, because part of us is rural, and that helps the farm community. And then looking at like Rotary clubs, applying for funds in that manner. So just, looking for other alternatives to help supplement our capacity and purchases.
Thanks, Robin. All right, so this next question here is, I think, just very timely. But as daily life is becoming increasingly politicized, how do you maintain the objective and nonpartisan mission of emergency management in your communities?
We try to make sure everybody understands we're here to serve the whole community. I mean, there's not an R or a D behind your name when it comes to emergency management. You're not blue or red. It's whoever needs help is who we give help to. We realize that some parts of the community are going to be able to self-rescue, self-help. That's fantastic. The ones that can do that, we let them alone, let them do that, and we try to make sure we go after the folks that can't do that. And whether it's education, whether it's mitigation projects, whether it's training, we try to go to the folks that vulnerable population we talked about earlier that need the help, that maybe don't have that ability to do it on their own. So there's no different politics to us.
Just going to add that, I really try to always look at the approach of collaborating, always trying to figure out from, looking at the other side of the coin, what they're trying to achieve and what I'm trying to achieve, and how it can be, as Jess said earlier, a win-win, what the benefit is that can help, solve whatever that need is in the community.
I think though there's a distinction, and I, what Robert said is 100% correct. We don't, if someone needs help, public safety helps them, emergency management helps them. We don't ask questions, right? But at the same time, it is wise to understand the politics that you are working in and you're working under. Understanding, what the overall political environment of your locality or your organization is, so that you can do the best to help advocate to do better for your community, If you have a certain set of, ideals or politics or goals or visions that your elected board has, that because of course they represent the people, understanding that is also going to just help you succeed in those win-wins and, really getting to know those elected leaders, because that is important in our job, is to at least be in front of and have them know who we are as well. So understanding the politics is different than being political.
And I know for me, I guess my approach is doing the right thing all the time. Just make sure we just doing the right thing all the time, and then spreading the word. The first 72 hours, when an incident happened, they're on their own. It's not nothing personal. They might look at other situations, think, well, why they didn't come help us yet? No, 72 hours, you're on your own. So I guess as more as we keep spreading the word and get on that information, that would help people understand, emergency management response. They might look at, well, we should have came, yesterday, but pretty much everybody got the same policy across the board. The first 72 hours, you have to be prepared to take care of yourself.
What's something that stresses you out about the job? How do you manage that stress? And then on the other side of that is, what do you love most about the job?
Ooh, my stress is also my passion and my love. It's awful. It's like a little hamster wheel of highs and lows, because the thing I love about this job is it is never the same thing every day. Absolutely. You are doing, active shooter planning, special event planning in education one day, and then you flip to a hurricane, and then you flip to this and you flip to that, and you're constantly interacting with different people from different, professions and backgrounds and experiences. But that also means you have a lot of projects, a lot of work, a lot of things that are on your plate that are competing for your time. You're never really off. You're constantly on to some degree, because emergency management is so integrated in so many different things. So you have a lot of stuff going on. So I love all the things, but all the things suck up all the time that I have. And it's hard to find ways to balance that. Like, I'm starting to build in days of my week where I literally will not schedule any meetings unless someone higher in the food chain and leadership structure than me says we're meeting this day, so that I can have full work days to manage grants, to review plans, to, be strategic and carry the program forward as a whole.
Mine is, right in line with Jess. I think the thing that I really struggle with is the administrative part, making sure that I meet those deadlines. And I think that's what I get stressful about. And the way that I do that is similar to what Jess does, is I make sure that I've planned out on my calendar, time in advance, of when those things are due, to make sure that they get done. And hopefully they get done way ahead of schedule, but at least that builds in some time, because not only do we have a lot of projects, but emergencies happen. Tropical Storm Debbie happened, the week before last, and I had a whole, slew of things I was planning to do. I was going on vacation the following week, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to focus on Debbie first. And so if there was anything that, needed to be done that week, I definitely would prioritize that, but trying to do those deliverables as soon as they need to be done, so that, they're not impacted by those types of situations when they come up.
I think working with such a diverse group of people is one of the strengths, and something I really love about it. I have people in my Rolodex, that I like to still call it, everybody from the maintenance guy at the high school all the way up to the city manager. It's great to work with such a diverse group across all the levels of city government. And having worked on a military base, it's neat to look at a different perspective now in local government, and how those relationships are different. There's a hierarchy, but I'm on a first name basis with most of those people, instead of everybody being, major, captain, lieutenant, or whatever. It's a first name basis, and that's really refreshing.
I know for me, my biggest stressor is the unknown. We plan, we meet, we prepare, but when something actually happens, is everything gonna happen the way it's supposed to happen? So the stressful thing for me is like just not having just the unknown portion. And then from a law enforcement standpoint, I'm stressed about dealing with an active shooter. You know, especially if you think about you're dealing with like a government building or the school. Is everything straightforward? We have to do the reunification place for the students. Are we prepared for that? Are we have the buses to get the students from this location to this location? So the part that keep me up is the unknown part, and then like all the planning that we're doing when it comes down to it, is everything will fall into place. I mean, I expect for everybody, you know, some people to be here at the EOC, but in reality, they all gonna try to be at the scene, you know. So that what keeps me up.
What advice do you have for students who are interested in emergency management as a career? And this can be about anything, whether it's personal or professional. Any insight is valuable.
My advice is to find your niche. Emergency management is a big field. Like I said, I'm from the law enforcement side, so just find your niche. And emergency management is if you look at it, emergency management is a part of every field. You know, as you look at the news, you know, Walmart have emergency managers. You got government departments have emergency managers. So it's a big field. So just find your niche, find out what part of emergency management you like, and just work on your craft.
Find opportunities to network. Emergency management is big, but it is also very small. Like to Major's point, there's emergency management professions or, you know, positions through all sectors, but we are still a very small group. So getting to know who's in emergency management, getting to know, and I would even say, you know, as students, look to volunteer. I mean, if there's one thing that everyone should have heard over and over again is we lack resources. You know, reach out and see if there's an opportunity to volunteer with an emergency management division or office. Learn the differences, you know, between local government, state government, healthcare. Manage expectations. What does an entry job look like, and where are they? So that you can prepare yourself and gain those skills. And then I really feel like this is a hard one for a lot of us because we are also dedicated. Take care of yourself. You know, you need to have some you time. This is a personal struggle of mine. You know, I'm when I'm off, I still check email, I still respond, I still do this, I still do that, because it's hard for me to turn it off. Which, you know, it creates more stress. So learn how to kind of draw that personal professional boundary early, and learn how to take care of yourself as much as you want to take care of other people.
I think all those are great remarks. The one thing I would add is don't limit yourself, and look to diversify your education as you work through this process. You're going to be a writer. You're going to be a numbers person. You're going to be a public speaker. You bring a lot of talents to the field when you work in emergency management. So do the things that you can do to diversify your education as you prepare, and don't be afraid to take those new opportunities. Stretch yourself. If you're not a good public speaker, take the class to become an instructor in one of the topics.
We're always looking for volunteers here in Charles City County too. I'd be happy to have you.
But CERT, you know, I mean, Robin mentioned it, Jess mentioned it. CERT is a great way to get involved for young folks if they're in school. Internships. So there are great opportunities out there to learn more about the profession. And just because you could be an English major and do an internship with an emergency management to help write plans and find out it's something you really love. You could be a math major and help come in, manage those budgets, and find out this is something you love. So don't limit yourself as a student to say, well, I didn't take the emergency management class. That's not a field I can get into. It could be the great field for you.
True story. The emergency management guy at VDH down in Crater Health District was a mass communications major that interned in my office that got into emergency management with me and went to VDH.
I really agree with everything that's been said. I think I would emphasize, a lot about the networking, looking for different agencies. There's a local emergency planning committee, get involved with those. My first introduction to that was for year 2000. my company, wanted me to go out and see what other businesses were doing. So to plan for that. So I joined local emergency planning committee at that time. There's the Association of Continuity Professionals, ACP, of course, VEMA, that we're all a part of. Those different types, even like Rotary, joining a Rotary group is a great place to network and learn about other industries and chambers of commerce. So, and then the last thing that I will add to that, it's a little different too, would be, take advantage of free webinars on the subject. There's, a lot of great things that you learn that can help you with your skills along the way.
I think this is a great time to plug, Robin said VEMA. VEMA is the Virginia Emergency Management Association. It's the state association. We are all a part of it. We joined very early on in our careers. Students, a student membership is $25. Actually, one of our VCU students is the student rep on the board of directors for VEMA. So, that is a great way. You're going to get connected. You're going to get information. You'll get opportunity. If you are able, volunteer at our state conference in March. That way you can attend and, get to meet people, get to see sessions. And then we also here in the Richmond area have a regional alliance, which your professor is the vice chair of. So, Darshan, I will let you tell them about the alliance and how, they can get connected or sit in and maybe work on some subcommittee projects.
Sure. So yeah, one of the things we weren't really able to hit on, during this session was how do we collaborate and work together in the region? And there are many different ways we do that. One is through the Virginia Department of Emergency Management region in their office, but the other way we do that, and I think the way we have to, the reason we do that is because we are so strapped for resources regionally. We do have a lot of these challenges when it comes to funding. So I think everyone a little over a decade ago got together and said, let's work together on these things. Let's apply for grants together, and let's work on projects together. Let's hold exercises together. And really, what that's evolved into is a group of several dozen localities and private sector organizations, universities, state agencies, federal agencies in the Richmond region that work together on emergency management topics, whether it's planning, training, exercise, mass care, sheltering, family reception, and community emergency response team, public outreach. So a lot of things we've talked about today that you've heard from panelists are worked on in that group, and that's another great way for students to get engaged. Join that group. It's not only a good way to learn about the field, but it's a good way to network and make connections, and maybe land a volunteer opportunity or job. That's all I had this area for this fireside chat. So I really appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. I know that it's going to go a long way, and it's going to have a lot of value for our students, and for their careers. I'm sure they're going to learn a lot from this. So again, really appreciate it on behalf of the class.